This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The following will contain strong language, adult themes, and you know this by now, Mara. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, we saying it's Nelle.
Hi guys, what's goody? It's Tammie.
Hey, it's your girl Mara.
And you're listening to the Not Too Much podcast. If you know,
you know.
Okay, people. Welcome back to the Not Too Much podcast.
Oh, it's how it's started.
Now, normally we try to do a little segue for you guys. We like to, ease you guys into the podcast episode. This episode is not, that's not it.
It'd be false
guys,
of us to do that. We just gotta get into it.
If this part of the visuals is released, all of us are smiling heavy because I'm going to be honest, I'm nervous to talk about the topics.
Nervous and slightly uncomfortable. I can't lie. This is a very personal topic. It's a very personal topic. So yeah.
So let's just get stuck into it. Oh, even my head has started to hurt me a little. Oh,
is that related?
Oh Lord.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
So we are all part of the African diaspora.
In case you didn't know already.
And in different ways. We are all part of the African diaspora in very different ways. In different generations as well.
Yeah.
I would say as well. But we're also on social media. Okay, people. And we see a lot of the interesting topics and debates that take place, these commentary debates, or just full out wars between two parts of the African diaspora. And it's exhausting me. In fact, it has exhausted me. And guys, I'm tired of the African diaspora. Hey, I said it. Are you?
I am.
Are you?
I am. Tammie's avoiding the answer. Hello?
I'm tired of diaspora wars.
Oh, okay.
I'm and it still links back to a level of exhaustion with the diaspora. But I think my thing is I'm definitely exhausted about the divisive commentary surrounding identity politics. And what has come onto, this might just be my For You page, the way that it's been built, but the type of commentary in this topic that I usually come across is about critiquing other diasporans about how connected they are to the culture. If they've not done this, the checklists have required around that. And I just think the usual commentary around that, especially language is the typical one that gets brought up a lot. I'm exhausted. That is what exhausts me, the identity politics around it and the divisiveness.
Mara?
I've bowed out. Listen, I don't get that shit on my For You page no more. Not interested, because the important conversations that could be had and will be had in topic 2 of this episode, child, are just being missed, and instead of fighting over who has the best jollof rice. Hello?
It's not even, do you know what? I think what really got me was when and when I say the African diaspora, maybe I think it's important that I outline what it means for me and you guys outline what it means to you guys as well. Because for me, when I think about it, I do think about Africa as the motherland, right? And everyone who came from it. So like you have, for example, I'm part of the Black Brits. Okay, period. But then I'm also part of the Black African Brits. And then my own country within that. But then there are the African Americans. There are the Black Brits who are from the Caribbean. And then there are first gen, second gen, third gen. There are people who third gen. I had to get dialed down. There are people who were born and then moved. There are Dutch, Black Dutch, Black French. Guys, The diaspora is wild.
It's wild.
And it's so vast.
Mm.
What do you guys think it is, though? Like, where would you guys go with it?
For me, I would probably echo the same things you said. I just view it as a very global community of people of, well, when we're talking about the African diaspora, people of African descent. And that spreads across the globe. And like you've outlined, I would agree, I'm part of that community of Black Brits, but then also Black African Brits. But yeah, that's how I would see it, to be fair.
I echo that. Because technically, I'm sure the definition of diaspora is literally scattered. So Africa is the homeland, but people who have been scattered from it but still identify with that place of origin, like their heritage. And listen, it gets complex because, as you said, I think that's why there's so many talking points. It's like a never-ending like echo chamber because it is so vast and it can get very. There's levels to it because I'm both Black British, Black African, Black Caribbean, and third gen. So when you mix all of those shits and you spread it across the globe, I'm not surprised, but I am tired.
Okay, well, what specifically are you guys tired of? Because I know that Tammie previously mentioned identity politics. Is it the actual questions itself, or is it the way it's being discussed? Do you think it's the platforms? Like, what is exhausting you guys?
I do think, whilst it is the questioning aspect of it, because I don't, especially the way it's being presented, and I'm speaking about this specifically in a digital space, because I think that is where I can see where my frustrations lie. It doesn't seem like we're leading to a productive conversation about where we are currently as African diasporans and those experiences and understanding that they are different. It's the thing of othering and saying, oh, you're part of it, you're not part of it. Darling, as long as I'm like, I'm part of it. And I think I'm just not comfortable with the way it's being discussed because it seems, how do I say, it seems very checklist, and like I tried to say before, it just seems as if the way it's a platform to either valorize some people that fit within the notion of what people believe to be African diasporans, and then othering those that don't meet the criteria or the perceived criteria. So I think, yeah, and especially because of TikTok commentary, especially the way that it can just go one to the next, to the next, to the next, and are we even talking, or is it a stream of consciousness? So that's my frustration. It's too microwavable, so I'm not really getting substantive commentary. I'm getting a lot of, and not to say that there isn't some out there, but typically the one that is so widespread and so disseminated on those platforms isn't, for me, from my experience, the ones that are the most productive and more so divisive.
Well, I was literally going to say quite a similar thing. I think the conversation, I think the issue why it's so draining for me personally is that the conversations are quite divisive. And I think when we speak about something as, I would say, delicate as identity, to start kind of creating a divisive narrative around it, it can be quite harmful. And I do think sometimes the platforms are kind of adding to that because, for example, the commentary we see on TikTok, you're not really doing long form commentary, especially if it's one of those podcasts, the little podcast, even though we're a little podcast, that sounds derogatory. Like that. But it's like 30 seconds, 1 minute, 30 clips of something that there is kind of no concrete answer to it. And so, but I kind of struggle with it because I'm like, just because it doesn't have a fixed answer doesn't mean it shouldn't be a talking point. So I kind of go back and forth of, wow, should I really be policing what people say? And to be fair, I don't. I just bow out. So
which some people could do, but they don't.
Wow.
But I agree with what you've just said there, Mara, because the thing is, I'm not here to exclude it from being a talking point. I would just want it sometimes, in my ideal way, to be talked about a little bit more responsibly and sensitively, because my issue is this is not a conversation in which you can operate in binaries, like many, but especially this. It's so abstract at this point. And yeah, I just think the way it's kind of gotten to now, I'm quite tired, quite exhausted, how we phrased it in the beginning.
Go now with your non-binaries.
Yeah, because if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that I say that I do not operate within boundaries. I don't believe in them. I think they are hard to enforce, in fact. I would have to agree with what the both of you have said. I think the issue is the lack of nuance that gets pushed out to the majority of people. I think we do have very nuanced conversations and arguably debates that happen online, but the ones that garner the most attention and the ones that get pushed out algorithmically, is that a word? I don't know.
It is now.
The ones that the ones that do get pushed out lack that nuance, and they lack balance and open-mindedness in those conversations. It's, as Tammie said, are they conversations or streams of consciousness? It is very, very brick-like. Solid, heavy, but easy to smash and break apart because it's so porous. And it's like, you look solid. You look, don't mind the buzzing, guys. You look solid and you look substantial, but there's nothing there. I think nuance is needed in these conversations, and they're just not being pushed out to the most people. And most people don't want to hear nuance because they don't have the attention span to consume it. So, no shade to anyone in this, but it's sad. And so it makes me just want to tap out.
That's the thing. Like, yeah, I'm so sorry. I thought I was going to say more, but...
it's a very simple...
Are we tired? Yes. Is there anything that can really be done to change that right now? No.
Because you know what it is? I really do feel like as a diaspora, we are so diverse and we have so much culture and just energy that each subsection and a subsect of that subsection has its own long history that you need to, and trauma that you need to understand to engage with in a balanced way. So it's why when I see African Americans talking on Twitter, I keep my mouth shut because I don't understand what it's like to be from the southern states and why they're talking in the way they're talking, in the same way that I would expect them not to speak about what it's like to be from South London.
That's when,
do you know what I mean?
The infighting that I tune out of, because
I'm out.
Being further fragmented, was this the point?
Well,
because you know they loved it.
Yeah,
they loved a bit of divide and conquer. Like, look at us.
Sorry, before I get back. Sorry.
It is true though, because I think the issue is that, like, we already have, and this is not necessarily a bad thing or a diss, but we already come from a very fractured identity in a way. So I don't know why everybody comes out swinging when we talk about these topics, and you're just adding cracks in it. And my thing about it is, be careful, because you're putting this on our podcast and you're putting it out on TikTok because you're having conversations with people who you are related to, but you are also inviting people outside of these diasporas and cultures to then have a say and opinion, and then you're getting offended about other people from different cultures having a take when you, and being disrespectful when you're not even treating the topic point with respect in the first place. So what do you think people are going to do? They're going to come and they're going to pile on. Like, please.
I wish you were in person right now, Mara. I would hug you so damn bad, girl.
Catch it.
Mara said something so important there, because I saw a TikTok the other day that touched on this. That the idea that because we can be so visible on these platforms, there is a benefit in that, to say that, listen, we can actually see each other and connect, and we can actually strengthen community. But it also means that the flip side is, for people outside of our communities, they are also able to see us and gain a level of access to us. And there is a danger in that. I'm so sorry.
And I do want to put the caveat is, we are not responsible for them and policing them. We are not. But it is something to keep in mind when you start talking, especially online, because there are certain demographics that love to hear us fight.
That's the thing. They take pleasure in it. And I think you guys need to be a bit... Everybody wants to gatekeep things until it comes to really important things like this. And then the floodgates are all open. I'm like, hello. The only thing
And
I
now-
will say...
But I also think the diaspora and the idea of it is also very gatekept in the same way.
Expand. Please.
Like, from kind of going back to what I was mentioning in the beginning, I do think there's a level of gatekeeping, but I don't think it's done necessarily to people outside of our community. I think it's done to people within the diaspora themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's just a thing off the top of my head, but if you know what I mean.
It goes deeper and deeper.
I think also one part of I think one thing that really tires me about the diaspora is who becomes the face of it. And the very, very incessant erasure of certain people within the diaspora. And I'm going to be very frank about it. The erasure of those within the diaspora that identify as LGBTQ+. Those within the diaspora that have very visible disabilities. Those within the diaspora that do not conform to certain religions. And there is this clear erasure within the face of the diaspora that I think makes it so exhausting to hear discourse, because I'm like, you're operating with is tunnel vision. I can't get behind that.
Because that's such an interesting point you brought up, because especially when I look, and our next topic will be so interesting, but especially when I look at where we are as the African diaspora now, and what is being pushed out to us, or what we're being used to advertise, is very much, how do I say this and be frank, black elitism, if that makes sense.
Let's get into it.
Well,
like when I'm thinking about, for example, something as small as just events and them wanting to unite the African diaspora and saying, come along, and the image that they're trying to present, I'm saying you're trying to include those people that have a level of privilege within their sector to be able to extend themselves in these environments. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you're encouraging to come into that. And the way that that's looking at, yes, I agree, there's an erasure of particular people within particular communities within the diaspora, and then there's a pedestaling of others.
Oh God! Wow.
Well, let's wrap it up here, because
we ain't done.
We're not done. And if you need to take a break before listening to the next topic, do so, because it's about to get heavier.
It's gonna get heavy, and I just, guys, the only thing I will say before we is the one thing that should be stopped is putting plantain in everything. Why am I seeing pasta sheets in a lasagna be blended plantain?
You man wrap everything in everything.
That's all I will say. So,
and you know what? Adding on top of that, let's use oxtail correctly.
Not in everything. Oxtail was in my mind, you know.
Let's use oxtail correctly.
Free yourselves.
Please.
TikTok chefs.
TikTok chefs.
Yeah.
No, it's
add it to the topic back, guys. Add it to the topic back.
We will.
Why is oxtail in everything? Please.
Okay, well, welcome back to our promo break. Hopefully, a nice little rest stop where you can grab some water, use the loo, grab a fruit, I don't know, nestle down, or maybe you're on the tube. I don't know where you are, but make sure to keep this in mind. Follow us at the NTM Pod on I think it's our Instagram, and at the NTM Podcast on our TikTok. Make sure to give this a 5-star review, or if you feel called to any other star review, I don't mind. Hey, you're listening and engaging on Apple Podcasts and also Spotify. And yeah, I think that's everything. On with the show. Okay, so we're recording this virtually in October, but by the time this comes out, it will be holiday season.
For some.
For some. Now, a lot of people will be going and prepping for Dirty December. And for those who may not be familiar of that concept, I guess the best way to describe it is when people go back to, Ghana, Nigeria, and they just, they enjoy themselves. They have a good time, let loose, and have a bit of fun.
The party.
In their holiday season.
Everyone's faces when you said that was just very telling.
Look, go on TikTok, type up Dirty December, and you'll see what we're
You'll
talking
have
about.
quite a
You're
time
not acute on this topic. But recently, due to a lot of just global events happening, taking place, it has begged me to ask the question. When we go back to our homelands, are we investing or taking? Now,
on the basis of the example that you've given us.
From the basis of you are in a new country, so you're a second gen or even first gen maybe, or third gen, and you've decided to go back to your home country, whether that is in Africa or in other places, and you are essentially touristing there, to be fair. Even if you have family there, you're not a resident there. And I made that might hit a nerve with some, and I apologize if it does, but
we're gonna
you
hit
are
harder.
touristing.
Yeah.
Right. It does beg the question, right, are you investing in that country, helping with tourism, pouring money, or are you really taking away resources for the locals? I do have a question before we get into that big one. Based on your own personal cultural intersections, how do you perceive going back home for the holidays?
What's the silence?
Okay.
Because I fear that we might have three different,
Yeah, okay.
Well, I would say I perceive it as a time to see family, time to just, especially because my family, maternal and paternal side, is quite split up across the country. It's a kind of thing, if I was there, it's participating depending on like cultural celebrations, maybe carnival, stuff like that. And just really just touching base, touching ground, being able to just be with family. That's how I perceive that time. And going back to homelands, and also being able to be in touch with the country itself, because I know, well, realistically, I was born and raised in the UK, in England to be specific. And so I've spent so much of my childhood and my upbringing here. And so having that opportunity to actually connect and spend time when I have those chances to go, that's also a thing in my priority. That's how I also perceive that time of going back and connecting.
Okay, I have a different perspective because I am third gen, so my grandparents are here, both sides, and so the way that some people would see like going back to your homeland, a home away from home, I'm like, most of my family is here or go back and forth. So going back home for the holidays would, for me, would be more of a holiday instead of seeing family, because my immediate family is in the spread across the UK or Europe, but not necessarily back home. And so it wouldn't make sense for me to be like, oh, if I was seeing family out there, they wouldn't be my immediate family. So I have a different perspective on that. So I wouldn't necessarily see it as a home away from home. It would be more of a cultural awareness, exchange, discovery, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Now, what about
I
you?
did ask that question because I know that for me personally, anytime that I do go back, it is normally because there is something happening. It's not like we're just going to see family. Like there's a wedding, there's some sort of celebration that requires, the family to come together and to kind of be happy, be joyous and whatnot. I just out of resources wise, it is very expensive to go back home. So when we do go back home, we go for a while, and it is normally there's a reason we're back.
I agree with that, because I think the way that we define holidays, it's kind of like, okay, you're going for a week or a couple of days. You're going for like a short-term period. But whenever I've gone back home, so to speak, it's never been for a short while kind of thing.
It's been
and I didn't even deep that, because to me that's quite natural, But yeah, I can see that the difference in that.
And I say that because we were talking about the African diaspora earlier and how diverse it is, and just between the three of us, we holiday, quote unquote holiday, in a very different way whenever we go back to, I don't want to sound hotepi, but like our ancestral like homelands. Now, do you think that changes based on age? So how people our age would holiday based off our parents, grandparents?
Yeah.
Because if somebody my age, our age, was like, oh, I'm going to Lagos, oh, I'm going to Accra December, I'm thinking, oh, you're there to party, have a good time. If someone older was going, I'd be more inclined to think that you're going to see family, you're going to go, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And more so, what you touched on before about there's an event going on, not as if like event has different meanings depending on the context. I think I'm hearing more so for parents, grandparents, older aunties and uncles that they're going because even something has happened with the family over there, they've got to go see them, or there's a wedding, or there's a particular celebration, a birthday type of thing. But no one's just, I think our age specifically, and there's a lot of different reasons for this, is just going for a birthday to the places that we've mentioned as just examples. If they are, when I hear about, and this is definitely from a British centric view, but when I hear people say, oh, I want to travel for my birthday, or I want to go and catch a flight for my birthday, depending on the year, it can change, but typically it's in Europe. And it's the most common destinations that you're hearing. So I do think, it's different. And they're weekend trips as well, day trips. You cannot be doing that in this situation.
No, because I don't think people our age have, well, some of you have the money, but the resources to go and just, I feel like most people our age is Peru Pararin. Real life. That's what they mean when they go. No? Because say when my granddad goes back home, he's there for ages and he's seeing family and he's staying with family. It's not even like a hotel thing. Like, you're in it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas personally, I'm going to an all-inclusive. So
And
That's interesting.
That's interesting.
Down to the place that you even stay with. Because in my head, I would be like, okay, I'm going to stay. Redact name. I'm going to stay with this person.
Stay with this person, this
I'm
individual.
going to stay with this person here. I'm going to go stay with this uncle there.
See, I have a day trip.
But do you know what? I'll be honest now.
Wow,
And this is
okay.
Because I was like, okay, this is the next question. I'm so glad you brought this up, Mara. To what extent do we identify as tourists? Because hear me out. If I'm going back home with my family, yeah, I'm staying with family.
Yeah.
If I'm going back home by myself, or let's say that you guys were like, I'm like, let's go here.
Yeah.
I'm getting a hotel.
Really?
I'm not staying with family. I'm not going to go for you guys to come and chop food. We'll come and visit the family. We'll come and say hey. We'll come and greet. Hello.
I would divide it up. Sometimes, because I would feel, I don't know, I think maybe it's a cultural thing. It'd be disrespectful if I come and I'm not staying with you at least for a little bit. Then obviously we can get our own space.
Hear me out.
Yeah.
And this is why I identify as a tourist, right? Because when I go back home, I'm a tourist. I'm going to be real. One, if I go back home, I will be expected to help out. I will be expected to help.
Yes.
Clean, cook. Naturally, because you're in someone's home.
Yes.
Respectfully, you need to put in the work now because you can't be just rocking up to someone's yard and did it. No, we're going to put in the work.
You're barely, I guess.
No, give it 2 weeks.
Barely, I guess.
Right?
Listen, that's what I say. Even when you guys come to my house, I said, you're a guest one time. Next time, you better know where everything is.
But it's like, I'll be honest, when I'm going back, I recognize that, like, when I'm going shopping, oh my gosh, everything is so cheap here. I can get this and this and this and this. But for the locals, it's not cheap. It's not Inflation cheap. Is happening. And the country's economy is that, like...
And obviously the difference in our currencies, you see from there how you are able to extend your wealth in a way as a tourist that the locals aren't able to. And I think it's understanding through tourism how we are actually outpricing these locals. And because the systems and regulations that should be in place to protect them are just not being put down there because for the love of money. Those that are meant to support are not.
Yeah. I've seen the argument of people going back home. And whenever I say home, I put it in quotation mark, guys, because it is so subjective.
Yeah.
I'm just saying home as a sort of catch-all term. But when people go back home, they're like, oh, but when we pay for all of our taxis or Ubers, if it operates there, or hotels, that is going back into the country's economy. It's what's helping people, But like, I know that where I'm from, infrastructure is put in place and there's investment in building into touristy areas and making that look pretty and that look functional rather than helping build roads in most of the country. Like there's schooling, healthcare, completely neglected, but tourism, they're on it like a car bonnet.
That's the thing, they're always on it. And I feel like people sometimes are willfully ignorant about that. There is a divide because I think some people, not all, not saying everybody who goes back home feels this, but some people feel just because their homeland makes up a part of their DNA that they are entitled to that country, its resources, its access. And I think sometimes we miss the mark on just because it is part of your DNA doesn't mean you're culturally of that origin. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying.
You can only understand what you experience to a certain extent. Do you know what I mean?
I had,
for example,
sorry,
Tammie.
Oh no, because I was like, you made a good point, and I had a question from that. Do you think, especially for diasporans, they romanticize this idea of going back to their homelands? Because I always seem to hear in passing these comments of, oh, I just need to go over there for a couple of weeks, rejuvenate myself, completely be fresh, and then come back. And that idea of, are we investing in this, or are we just taking? because to me that is very much a taking thing. It's not what I can do for this country or for this continent, it's what I can get from it.
Do you know what it is? When I first was thinking about this topic, I tried to reverse it. And I do think that how close you are to your family members, to who reside in said country, does make a bit of a difference.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
if you are speaking to them every week, you're engaging with them, you have that sort of relational aspect to it, then you coming round and and I can sort of like get it, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you see them the only time you speak to these people are when you get there, or if you need a place to stay, or if you, it's a bit techie. And I'm not blaming anyone who does this, because I'll put my hands up and be completely honest, that is me. I have coasted off being a child and a teenager for so long that building up true relations to those living in my home country has just not really been a priority for me, if I'm going to be honest. I'm coasting on the fact that I've been a child, right? So going back, like if I was to be like, oh yeah, I'm going back home and I want to bring my 2 friends with me, I'm sure that I will be welcomed. There's no doubt. However, that is a bit tapped. Because if the roles were reversed and somebody had to come back to where I live in the UK and I have to pay for everything, knowing full well that my country's political system was a bit shaky, it looks like you're taking away instead of investing, no?
And I think that's just, I think we need to have a bit more honest conversations with ourselves, maybe, that there is the glamorization and the romanticizing of going back home. I think maybe we should address the reason why you don't feel, because as Tammie said, it's to go back home to rejuvenate, to touch, I don't know, to take something. But I'm like, why don't you feel welcome in the country that you originally reside in? You cannot outrun prejudice, racism, capitalism, corruption. So what is the reason?
From what I've gathered from certain people's reasonings for it, or the things that they love about being there, because you guys have touched on it just earlier, the financial point of it, how things are incredibly cheap and accessible from them, contrasting their own experiences being in their own country. And to me, that's when I think to myself, that's so exploitative, of course. Because whilst it touches on a greater conversation of how people just wish to afford things a little bit more, my thing is, by you being able to go somewhere else and afford something more, it also means for those that are already living there, they cannot afford what they were previously affording, barely. And I just think, for me as well, there's this idea of community. I don't know what it is, but I think some people, and I can say myself as well, have been lucky that the parents have put in so much effort to like cultivate a community when they've come to this country. And so through aunties, siblings, children and uncles' children and all of these things, you're able to have that common relationship and stuff like that. All you have to do is really come to the barbecues, come to the birthdays, come to the celebrations, and that's the way you maintain it. You don't have to do too much outside of that because the foundation has been set for you. But now we're growing older, and it's kind of a thing in our adulthood, especially. Okay, where's the real community? Like, how have we actually put in the foundation for our own community? And you can't see it there. I think to myself, is that where the compulsion, the inclination to go over to somewhere else where that community is already afforded to you? Your family is going to be there, and they'll also extend their network to you as well, as a potential point. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, yeah. It is one of those things where like we are, and here's where I I will be honest, in this conversation, none of this is attacking anyone, because unfortunately, just because of us being in a capitalist society, we are all exploiting someone at some point. Like the fact that I'm recording on a laptop which has been mined, its parts have been mined by children in Congo. That's an exploitation that I have to grapple with. And going back to your homeland, which you should, not saying that you shouldn't, you should go and get in touch with your culture, but it is very much like you're going to exploit someone at some point. It's just, are we recognizing that? I have one final question.
Cool.
Is it our responsibility to be clued up on the politics of the countries we're visiting, not just our homelands? Like, if you're going on holiday, is it our responsibility?
I thought you were going to ask a different question there, but on the question that you've asked, I do think so. Just the same way that for my safety and others, I would familiarize myself with where I would go just in where I live. I think that should be extended to where you travel to. And it should also not just be what concerns you, but what also concerns the people, because that would inform me this is a me perspective, but it would inform me to say if I should be going there necessarily.
I do agree. I think one, as a baseline, is just respectful, because the place you are going to, you might have to move a different type of way according to what is acceptable in that country. You cannot be so entitled to accessing everybody else's places of residence that you just bolster in and just show up as yourself with no qualms, because that's just not how it works. That's not how the cookie crumbles, and that's not how I think the cookie should crumble. But also, you do that. I feel like, well, actually, let me not assume, but I feel like I do that in my day to day where I live, like the country I'm in. So I think it just get clued up, man. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't ever want to. This is me, maybe it's a control thing. I wouldn't ever want to move into a space that is full of unknowns. So,
Tammie, what question did you think
I was say that I had that last question to piggyback off. I was going to say, do you think we have a responsibility to invest into our homelands, especially as we're getting older?
No. I'll be honest, no.
And
hear me out. Hear me out here. I think that if you want to, go ahead. If you feel like you are compelled to, go ahead. And especially if you have taken a lot from that country, maybe you should invest. But for the most part, I think it's so nuanced, and everybody's relation to their home countries is so different that it would be irresponsible to say that everyone has a responsibility to invest back, because some people in some countries, laws actively work against the existence of an individual. Anti-LGBTQ plus laws. I'm not gonna say that the responsibility of a Ghanaian, that person should now invest back into Ghana, because no. It's too nuanced, and there's too much going on there that it's not a responsibility. However, if you are going to go into a country, but especially somewhere that you're from, you need to think about your impact as a tourist and the impact it has on locals, and be as open-minded and responsible in your interactions. Well, sorry, that came across quite forceful.
No, I think it's fair, because I think the word that I usually have take reservation with is responsibility, because in itself, interestingly to me, I feel like it can be quite forceful and absolute to assume that everyone has the responsibility to do something. I would have agreed with you. I think especially for people that feel as though that is the move that they want to make, and they've actually formed for themselves quite a close bond or relationship, or feel a level of personal responsibility to take and not to take, sorry, but to invest back, I would say yeah. But I'm just not for asserting that everyone has the responsibility to do so. That's what I would have said.
Yeah, because I think responsibility is a thing that is just click. Have you seen
that was sharp?
Why did you do it again?
She's got a good click, you know.
She clicks and whistles.
No, all I was gonna say was I think responsibility is something that just can easily be weaponized. So I just I'm not getting into it too
add that to the topic dump.
You know, it's just something that can be weaponized very easily. And what? I don't know.
Sorry. Off mic conversation we'll have. Yeah.
Okay. I just think let's just the same way like we spoke about in topic 1. Responsibility people weaponize that in conversations about that. Everyone, if you feel whatever you feel called to do, you do. Everything. Leave the rest of the people out of it. Just because you feel responsible, that's not a me issue. So we can just thank you.
And also, let's also start. And also, before we look to each other and say, "Oh, we have the responsibility to do this," and we have let's also consult the bodies that we've put in power to have the responsibility to do certain things by their people. Because there's a lot of looking to everybody else but cut it.
It's true.
Hold those that are corrupt. And do you know what? And you know what it is actually?
What?
People are holding their governments accountable. Let's support them wherever we are.
Yeah.
Whether that's financial, whether that's speaking about it on social media. In fact, please support the Ghanaians dealing with Galamsey at the moment. Please. Thank you. What's happening in Congo? In fact, you know what? Because we're all part of the African diaspora. Africa is a large continent, but each country has its own set of unique challenges. And I will speak on West Africa, the corruption that is taking place.
The suppression.
Let us all do our part to support those citizens, whether we are in the UK, whether we're in Europe, whether in the Americas, wherever we are. Let's do our part to research, to understand, and then if you have the resources, put them towards where they need to be.
And maybe I'll be less tired of the commentary going around on socials. Maybe.
Yeah, because you'll be too busy reading.
But I will say, now also, just to wrap this up quickly, but you made a good point about it's not just about financial investment. There are ways in which you can support and advocate for people, which can enable environments that allow for sustainable investment. Because that's just, it's not necessarily happening right now, but it could be possible if we just bring those efforts together, guys. But anyway.
And that is the individual responsibilities we do encourage.
Okay, people, I've been Nelle.
I've been Tammie.
And I've been Mara.
And you've been listening to the Not Too Much podcast. If you didn't know before, you know now. Cool.
Sorry.
Oh, not so cool. No.
Hi everyone, it's Editing Nelle here. Now, for those loyal listeners of the Not Too Much podcast, you guys know that after the beep, we normally try and do a little outro song, just something from our hearts. Now, the outro song that was recorded virtually for this episode was so diabolically bad that I said, I've had to make the executive decision that it will not be uploaded into today's episode. I'm really sorry because I know some of you really do enjoy these outro songs, but not today. We don't want to assault your eardrums today.